How do you put up with all the bullshit? Wanting to push them off the ledges.
She goes home and writes soft porn.
That's
Well, I didn't know that.
perfect.
I didn't know that till towards the end of the discussion. So.
Exit stage left.
All right, you ready, Paige?
Yes.
Welcome to Trade Secrets. We're excited to have you back. And for those of you who are watching, make sure you give us a like or a follow on whatever channel you're using. We really appreciate that. And for you checking us out again. Today we're excited to introduce a guest, Lynn Colosi from Delta Development Group. Very excited to talk to her about transportation and LRTA and, the bureaucracy of getting projects across the finish line with government. So welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks for the bourbon as well.
Yeah. We will get to the bourbon for sure, but I guess just to kick things off, can you give us a little background about your career, where it started, how you kind of got to where you're at, and then what Delta
Sure.
Development's all about?
Sure. So I'm a journalism major by trade. I'm a broadcast journalism major, actually, from Duquesne University.
Don't judge us. we were not.
We are not, yeah.
Well, I didn't use it, so it's 40 years stale at this point. But I started my career at Port Authority of Allegheny County, which is now Pittsburgh Regional Transit, and worked my way through a variety of departments there. All very interesting. I was never in operations, which is primarily what Port Authority does, but I was on their business development and property development side of their business. Maybe not a lot of people knew that at the time or know that now. They have, $200 to $500 million worth of property throughout Allegheny County. And although most of it is used for transit functions, there was some that was vacant. So I, along with a team of people, started the first department called Joint Development at Port Authority. Okay. And what we did there was we sought private sector developers to lease property from us and build projects to create revenue streams for Port Authority.
And today, is that still a significant portion of their revenue?
It is not a significant portion of their revenue. However, it is a portion of their revenue.
Okay.
Like you might be familiar with, if you ride the T, South Hills Village Station.
Yeah.
Near the mall, there's a big apartment complex that was built there about 5 or 10 years ago. That's one of those kind of projects.
Okay, so they ground lease that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And they're not permitted to sell property unless they reimburse their funder, who is the Federal Transit Administration.
So they're always going to lease.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved and had experience with real estate development and transportation, and I parlayed that into a 10-year career with a small boutique transit consulting firm that I operated and owned, and sold that to Delta Development Group in 2013. And when I sold it to Delta, we finished up all the transit clients and then started expanding more into the transit-oriented development and joint development kind of work that I just described that Port Authority did.
Okay.
And so the projects that I work on now for Delta are not necessarily transit infrastructure. Some of them are, but most of them are interchange infrastructure, highway, bridge, trails, pedestrian, shared use pathways. Any kind of project like that that's going to open up property to create jobs, real estate taxes, put public property back on the tax rolls, and private property, of course. But.
And are you doing it for the private developer or for the public entity? Both? Like, how does that work?
So Delta and I do that both for public sector and for developers.
Okay.
For example, one of the pretty big projects we have is along the Allegheny River in Sharpsburg. If you've heard of Mercedes Development.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Mercedes and Mercedes Development is building a project there. We called it internally Riverfront 47, but it's going to...
Very familiar with it.
Familiar? That's our project.
Almost a key investor in that project.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah, it's a small world.
We pieced together the massive amounts of different kinds of public funding that's available for a project like that. It could be, PennDOT could be the source, Department of Community and Economic Development could be the source at the state level, the federal infrastructure money, all those funding sources, and they're all cobbled together to put into that project. That project, incidentally, is like $1 billion project, and we are still trying to raise $100 million in public money for that project. So it's big. It's a massive lift. So that's.
So you're Steve's third party like development finance team because he
Yes.
doesn't have a big team.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
makes sense.
And I met Steve in 2003. When I started my consultant firm, he needed some help with a project in East Liberty.
Okay.
And he hired us, and we're personal friends and business colleagues at this point. But we also do those kind of projects, not on that large of a scale, for municipalities. And that's primarily where I met you, Paige, in my role as the executive director of Moon Transportation Authority. Delta has a contract with Moon Transportation Authority to run it. We administer it, we do the government relations, the funding, the accounting, the project management, everything, because it has no employees.
No employees, but a
Board of directors.
board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
And are they council people, business people? Like, how does that structure in Moon work?
Moon's, I'll call the Moon Transportation Authority MTA.
MTA. Okay.
But MTA is comprised of 5 board members. 2 of them represent the township, 2 of them represent the school district, and 1 of them is a business person at large. All of those board members, are seated and approved by the township. And the reason we have those taxing bodies on our board is because we are funded through real estate taxes. Anytime a commercial building goes vertical and is occupied in Moon Township, we get the real estate taxes for a 10-year period.
You get
Just
them
commercial?
completely?
Just commercial.
You
Pardon,
get
Mike?
the funding completely?
We get the real estate taxes. The school district, the township, and the county real estate taxes.
Are going to MTA.
Yep. And this is called sort of Alerta, but not really Alerta.
I was gonna say I heard you at one point use Lerda with a twist.
Yeah,
in an
Alerta with a
interview.
twist.
Okay.
It's really called Alerta RAP, Alerta Reallocation Program. And, you're familiar with Alerta, where the developer, the property owner, gets an abatement for 10 years on his or her taxes. They don't have to pay real estate taxes.
And just pause there because some of
Okay.
our listeners probably
There's
don't know
an
what
acronym.
Lerda
What is-
means.
Yeah.
So what is Lerda?
Alerta.
We won't put you on the
Someone's
spot
gonna have
about.
to grab their phone.
Phone a friend.
We won't do that. What I was gonna say is, it's not that they don't pay real estate taxes. It's that they don't pay the incremental increase in real estate
Correct.
taxes, right?
That's correct.
Right. So if they're commercial
That's correct.
properties paying $30,000 a year in taxes, and then they redevelop it, and now the taxing body wants to charge $100,000 in taxes, they don't pay that $70,000
correct.
increase for 10 years
That's correct.
in a normal ERDA. But in your case, what's happening?
Those funds, those real estate taxes are required to be paid by the private
Developer.
developers.
Okay.
However, because this Lerta RAP district was created by legislation in 1986 and subsequently annexed over the years, the property owner has an option to either pay their taxes to the normal taxing bodies or contribute their real estate taxes to the MTA instead. Now, do you have a question about that? Because
Yeah, I got a lot of questions.
okay.
Yeah.
Because people were like, well, why would a property owner want to do that? Well,
Before we get, yeah, because that is one of them.
Yeah.
But
That's a question,
1986, like
yeah.
that is well before its time. So how did that come to be? And was it because the airport was thinking about moving? Like, what spawned the district? Like, it seems like Moon was ahead of its time relative to funding transportation projects.
I'd like to think that they were ahead of their time because of Delta Development Group. We've been involved since the onset. I haven't been,
Okay.
but my colleagues have. And also this attorney, his name's David Toll, Toal, and David invented this concept back in the 80s. And
Pittsburgh guy or?
Yeah,
Okay.
Pittsburgh guy. He still comes to our board meetings. He's special counsel for the MTA. We ask him all kinds of weird legal questions. But this was back when, if you can imagine, the airport was in Moon Township. It was getting ready to move. Can you believe it's that long
This
ago?
is the old airport.
Yeah, I still call this airport, the new airport, it's been there 30 years, but this is the old airport.
This is the old
Yeah.
airport that you're talking about.
Yep. And
Old's so relative. We're only talking about 30 years.
But if you're not familiar with it,
Right.
this was this is where it moved into the other township.
right,
Sure.
right,
Okay.
right. And I think Moon Township believed that because the airport had always been in Moon, that organically there was going to be this great development that was going to occur, residential and mixed use. It didn't quite transpire. And then when the airport was thinking about putting those plans together to build a new airport in Findlay, Moon Township only had one main road in its jurisdiction, and that was Beer School Road, which is now University Boulevard.
Okay.
It didn't have interchanges off of the business parkway. You just drove out to the parkway and you made that left into the airport, or you made that right onto Beer School Road and you went into Moon Township. Well, they knew they had all of this undeveloped property, but they had no interchanges or way to get to it easily off of the parkway. So they created this municipal authority in 1986 under the 1945 Municipalities Act, which creates an authority for 50 years. So the township, along with David and advisement from Delta, created that authority, but that's an unfunded authority. And then David Toll came up with this LERTA wrap idea about how can we fund this entity or get it enough money to leverage loans and grants to start putting in this infrastructure.
And its only purpose, the authority that is to put infrastructure in place,
Right.
right?
Only major infrastructure, like the regular roadways and the paving and the general maintenance of it is still done by Moon
But
Public
what is
Works. considered
considered to be mega infrastructure? I mean, that could be an interchange, correct?
Could be an interchange, yeah. We've put in several of those. In fact, we reconstructed Thorn Run Interchange 3 years ago. It opened in August, and so we've done that one twice. We've been around so long.
And think back to what the baseline of the taxes would have been, that was all agricultural ground. So it was
Right.
like, 2 cents on an acre, and the next thing you know, it's producing some serious cash.
Yeah, so that interchange, that Thorn Run interchange and the Ewing interchange, in between both of those interchanges, what sprung up almost immediately was the whole Charrington Parkway, the Pittsburgh International Business Park, all of those buildings out there, Service, Mark, there's a bunch of businesses along there now. That you're right, it was just vacant virgin land and, it was not producing much. But
But then those projects happen, tax level increases. So for a 10-year run, you guys get the benefit of that increase so long as the developer says, sure,
Yeah.
I'll give it to you instead of give it to the schools.
And that's the question I have is what was the incentive other than like why would a developer, I think this is the question, why would the developer choose to pay MTA versus just the taxing body? Like, and how many of the developers historically have chosen to go this route and contribute to the tax to the MTA instead of pay the taxing
Okay.
body?
I'll answer your second question first.
Okay.
Since I've been the executive director, 100% of the developers have made the decision to contribute their real estate taxes to the MTA.
Wow.
Do you have like a strong man behind the scenes that roughs them up?
Well, it would be simply control. I would rather give my money to 5 people I know I meet with, what are they going to do, versus whoever else is going to receive it to decide, oh, well, I need this to administrate giving you this back.
I don't think that's it. I'm curious.
Oh,
what
I'm
Lynn
positive
thinks. Why
that's
do
it.
you- Why 100% in anything is remarkable.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. So why are
Well, there hasn't been a ton of development in Moon, but it has really picked up recently over the past year, and we can talk about that a little bit
And
as well. But
your authority is still in place, so anything that comes out of the dirt, if it creates a tax increment, you still get that funding money, or if it
If
is
they
donated,
choose
if
to.
it's choose.
if they choose to
Correct.
donate it, yeah.
So it would go, that goes specifically to road improvements and infrastructure.
Correct.
Rather than,
Rather than
whatever the
wherever
hell
it
else
goes,
they
into
wanna put it.
into the
Yeah.
townships or the school districts or the county's general account, whatever they do it. These developers know that we are bound by law to invest that money into infrastructure that increases their tenancy, that increases their users, that creates a product that's better
Traffic
for
volume
them.
to their location.
Yeah.
it's control of the tax money. I mean, that's why. Well, why would you want to not give it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm curious, and she's kind of answered it, but why do you think that they think that, like you said, it increases tenancy? Why? Like, connect the dots of paying taxes to MTA increases tenancy.
So I'll use an example currently.
Okay.
There is a project that is being constructed. It's a private development. We say there's 700 or 800 acres in this property.
This
on
is
this
Diamond
district.
Ridge.
Yeah, this is Diamond Ridge.
Okay.
The township calls it Marketplace District
Okay.
because every road leading up to the site is called Marketplace something, Marketplace Boulevard, Marketplace Extension. But yeah,
And
it's
for our
Diamond
local Pittsburgh listeners, this is where the standalone Outback that has survived
Yeah.
is just sitting up on a
Yeah.
hill
Yeah.
along the Parkway West. Yep.
But now a lot of construction workers can have happy hour at Outback, you know?
It's amazing
It's
that
like
that
having a
Outback
heyday, you
survived
know?
being on an island for so long. Because it was originally a Kmart up there?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to frame it for the listener.
No, that's okay. Another framing piece for the listener is that you are absolutely right. And that property about 20 years ago was purchased by Chevron. They were going to put their headquarters there. And that didn't pan out. And there were some, economic downturns, and then it just sat underutilized, and then the pandemic hit, and then Byrne Scalo decided to take a run at Chevron to purchase the property, and that all worked out, and that is now the combination of Diamond Ridge. But here's what I mean by increasing tenancy and also reducing costs to developers to make them want to be in Moon Township versus another jurisdiction. So when Diamond Ridge was conceived and planned, along with, there are other pieces to that puzzle besides Byrne Scalo's
Sure.
piece. But they collectively submitted their traffic reports and studies to the township and to PennDOT. And basically, their traffic studies conducted on their behalf based on their traffic projections said, okay, we have to make $750,000 worth of roadway improvements so that people, just to get people off of Montour Run Road up into our new development or whatever. But when the township and PennDOT reviewed those documents, they're like, wait a minute. We need you to expand Marketplace Boulevard. This is their conversation.
I
with
can't
the
wait to hear what the city's number was.
And you have to expand Montour Run Road. Montour Run Road is owned by PennDOT. Marketplace Boulevard is owned by the township. And the developers are like, wait a minute, we didn't even do any engineering work relative to that. How much would that all cost? And the Township Board of Supervisors came to the MTA and said, can you have your engineering team work up numbers based on this development, what the infrastructure investment really needs to be to mitigate traffic, improve safety, and
Can I
create
guess
access.
before you say it?
Yeah,
I'm going to say 10x.
it was 10
10
million.
So more than 10x, because you were
10
the
million.
developer said 750,000, and the governmental body said it was 10 million.
But it was also 10 times of what it was doing. It was these are the road improvements where the developer said, yeah, this is what we've created. He said, no. This is the downstream we want you to fix.
Right, but
Right,
think about
yeah.
it. It's 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
10
no,
times.
it's more than 10 times.
It's more than
more
10
than 10
times.
It's like 13
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's like,
Yeah.
what's the word I want to use? The word I want to use is extortion. That's what the word is.
Well, I think
It's-
she was
I think-
involved in coming up with that number, right?
I
No,
came
but
up with
that's-
the
no,
number.
But it's, if you want to build this, this is what you have to do. This
Right.
is,
But no, it's a really important thing to pick on, and we're not picking on Lynn, we're picking on the fact
Right,
that the
yeah.
developer is hyper-focused on, all I care about is can the traffic get into my little project,
Right.
and this isn't a little project, this is a huge project, but your role in the MTA and the city, and I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, because, like, my heart and brain are with the
Yeah,
developer.
take your developer hat off
Right,
for a second.
But as a tax-paying resident, I also get that it's going to totally impact the way the rest of the Moon conducts business. Like, it's going to impact everything. So MTA is saying, whoa, you're not just worried about this traffic light. We're worried about like as he said, the downstream, like what's going to happen with all of the other ripple effects.
Yeah, when
Building
you have
this road is gonna
1,200
create
new
all these
people that are
other
living in this area that
opportunities.
need to come and go on
Yeah.
a daily basis. How's
And
that
that's
traffic
what makes
volume
it
getting handled?
more tenable. Is that now all
Exactly.
this money is being pumped into here, plus it's future money because you're going to build these things through bonds.
Correct.
Okay, rather than this is part of this particular development cost. Now, the future taxes that are developed here, that somebody else is gonna pick up this slack and then bring this one along. It's good leverage.
Yeah, and regulations and extortion run downhill. So
They're the same
the
thing.
MTA is not a regulatory body. So when we were entered into the whole chain of events, we had to do what PennDOT and the township told us to do as well.
Sure.
But we're just the delivery. We're the delivery agency.
Right.
So here's why the developer or the private sector will contribute to real estate taxes. Because the MTA is going to go figure out how to get $10 million to fix all this transportation infrastructure so that the private sector can do what they're intended to do.
Can
and
you
that's not
bond?
fix roads. We can.
You can bond.
We
So
can
you
bond.
are an entity that actually could put something in place if it was significant.
Correct.
And again, roads relieve pressure and they create opportunity.
Correct.
All
They
right,
can
so.
bond, but they have no revenue. But the revenue
But
comes
no,
from
the revenue
developer
comes from
saying-
future revenue, which is in the bond market.
So of that,
If
like,
you build
10
it, they will
million
come.
Of that $10 million
Particularly
dollars of necessary roadway infrastructure improvements, the developers that were impacted by that $10 million need, I think it's 5 developers up there that had to somehow make $10 million worth of roadway developments. So what percentage of that 10 million comes from their contributions to LRTA, like their tax contributions, and then how is the gap bridged to get to the 10 million?
That's a very good question because that is an exercise on every project that we do. So in the case of the Diamond Ridge and Marketplace District project, we formed a really great partnership up there. I can't say I've run into that in every project I've been involved with, but those guys have been amazing, the developers. We sat down and I said, look, you were willing to make $750,000 worth of improvements. Why don't you write the MTA a check as part of your development agreements with the township? With that money, we'll start the soft cost work. We'll start the preliminary engineering, get through the final design, the soft costs on this are pretty high, relatively speaking. They're like $3 million. The construction is $7 million.
Okay.
So they were going to pay $750 anyway. So they contributed that on their own. Didn't have to do that to the MTA, and they've also signed over the contributions for the real estate taxes. So just Diamond Ridge, which is Burns Scallo's building number 1. Prism at Diamond Ridge, which is the residential project up there, 396 units. And a senior living facility that is underway there. Whenever those are completed and vertical and occupied and reassessed,
Yep.
they'll yield about $1.2 million to the Transportation Authority
Annually.
for 10 years.
So
annually
that's
for 10
so
years.
it's
12 million.
back to the first discussion of like, say the basis at entry was $300,000 of taxes or $30,000 of taxes to make it easier, and then all this development happens. It gets reassessed. The taxes owed then would be $100,000. The LRTA wrap, the $70,000 would go to MTA, and the initial
I'm good right now.
$30,000 would
Correct.
still go to the taxing body.
Right, that's correct.
Got it. Okay. So until things come out of the ground, they still just pay the $30,000 to the taxing body, or they pay that.
To the taxing body.
So they've always paid the $30,000 to the taxing body.
But they
and
actually
then-
get a little bit more than the 30,000, and this is another complication. When I keep talking about we get the real estate taxes on the commercial, the vertical, all of those improvements, any of the land improvements, which may have included that 30, where the land is improving as well, just based on the new development.
Yeah.
So the taxing bodies get 100% of the increment from the reassessed land.
Land. Okay.
Okay.
So, the theory is that the theory is that if not for MTA, this wouldn't happen.
I think it's more than a theory.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, I say theory because some of our taxing body partners, particularly at the school district, they don't like it.
they don't like it because
Yeah.
they want the money
They
now.
want the money, but the decisions were made before they got on the school board.
Yeah,
so.
and I think in
And
any
do
kind
they-
of increment financing that is bonded from taxes, it's the same thing. If we didn't build it, you wouldn't get the taxes, and you will get them eventually.
And we're not talking about 100 years from now, we're talking about 10 years.
10 years.
Right.
Well,
like-
some increment
this is a-
finances go significantly longer
Yeah, but
than
no,
that.
in this case,
In this
this is 10
case,
years.
it's 10 years on that particular component of it.
And I get a lot of, why don't you and the developers just work together to do a TIF? And I'm like, well, that could be up to 20 years. Of
could
the
be up to
full
30
incre-
years.
Of all of it.
Yeah.
So we think it's a nice compromise and everybody gets something from it. And MTA's previous work generates over $9 million a year.
What happens in 36?
Well, that's when we sunset, right?
Yeah.
So we're a 50-year authority. We are going to sunset in 2036, but we collect, say for example, there's a development that occurs and it goes vertical in 2036,
Collect
MTA
till 46.
You
we
can run
collect
for
till
the next
46
10 years.
because we have debt to pay down. We have a loan from PNC Bank. We have a business in our sites loan for Charrington Parkway, which opened up all the development along Charrington. And then we match grants and things like that. But yeah, we're 2046.
Yeah.
So is that something that someone can advocate for that to be extended?
Yes.
Yeah. And is anyone talking about that, or that's an
Well-
8 years from now problem?
I'm gonna have to mold
You're like,
somebody
I'm
much.
retiring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have to mold someone many years junior to me that cares about that problem. But I'll be long alive, I hope. But
Long gone from that.
Long gone from
Worried about the bike path in
from where-
Florida.
Yeah, right, right. Long gone from. So does that make sense to you? Do you come across those kind of projects or that kind of scenario at all in your work?
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense. I don't know that our users or our listeners really see this on a day-to-day basis. The wrap, the Lurdo with a twist is interesting and new. Admittedly, something that I had not paid any attention to until I was doing some research about your background and how you were doing this. But it makes if you're the development team, it makes total sense. Like if you're Steve or Burns or, Gary, because I think Gary's involved
Yeah.
out. Yeah, right. So.
Yep.
Yeah,
I mean, we have dealt with clients that even just for their location, the state was going to require, they were going to be required to install like a traffic light. So we have worked with clients that when it comes down to the traffic study, we find things that are like, well, this project is going to be 25-30% more expensive than we thought because of the requirements just to handle the volume of traffic that would be going to this site. So on a smaller scale, nothing that's going to require like $10 million of roadway improvement for an entire development. But I think we have definitely, one of our clients in particular, like every time like, oh, PennDOT might put the kibosh on this for us, we have encountered that.
But they're always, and this is a question and a statement at the same time, like how many MTAs are there in the Pittsburgh region? Because our experience, to Paige's specific client example, is that there's no solution. Like it's going to cost X and then they walk away from the project because it just doesn't make any sense. Whereas if an MTA was in place in that area, then there would be a solution to fund for the downstream PennDOT issues. So are you guys one of one?
We're one of one, and
Oh my
I wouldn't mind talking that through because this will be like a psychotherapy session for me, right? So MTA, because I get this a lot, and I think about it a
Pour
lot.
another bourbon.
Yeah, really. Because I think about this a lot. Why aren't there more? Because MTA is wildly successful. And the legislators at the state level, at PennDOT Central Office and at the Department of Community and Economic Development love
have friends there?
seeing the MTA come. Yes,
Do you have friends
yes.
there? Can we talk offline?
Yeah, yes, sure. They love seeing the MTA come and ask for grants because we have such a track record delivering projects. We bring local money, significant amounts of local money to a project.
That otherwise was going to be forced to be funded by the state alone.
Correct, which
Yep.
would be 80% or 100% funded by the state. And we are very aggressive getting federal money. And they love when entities like the MTA bring federal money into a region because it takes some burden off of them too, and their dollar goes farther, our dollar goes farther. So I get a lot, if you guys are so good and the state loves you and you have such a track record, why aren't there more of these? And I think part of the answer is because it's complicated. I mean, it's complicated.
Right.
I don't think there are a whole lot of people out there that have the skills in real estate, property development, funding, government relations, financial plans, can oversee planning, design, construction. I mean, I think it's just such a complicated thing, and municipalities, public sector clients, they might do one big project in their lifetime. Moon Township does them regularly. So that's the only thing I can come up with. If you could help me with that answer, because I get that question a lot.
And
if you're so great, why aren't there more of you?
And you think that every municipality should have an MTA?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Across the state, or is
Across the state.
Okay.
Across the state. But I think one of the reasons is also why there might not be one is because townships, municipalities aren't as forward-thinking and risky as risk takers as Moon Township.
Yeah, because
And
let's
people
talk
don't
about that for a
change,
second.
yeah.
If in the Diamond Ridge example, so developer was going to spend $750 to do the work they thought needed done. Municipality says no, it's really $10 million.
Sorry about that.
And we're going to fund it based off of 1.2 million of projected annual tax increase. But that's on a spreadsheet.
It's on a spreadsheet. Plus, we added $3.5 million to that 3 weeks ago. Congressman DeLuzio's
So it's
office gave us an
13.5.
earmark.
Okay.
So,
Meaning you got funding, or it's going to cost more?
got funding,
Okay. So,
federal funding.
but if the spreadsheet, like we always joke, you could tell any lie you want with a spreadsheet, right?
Yes.
So you're projected to get 1.2 million in increased taxes, but turns out year 7 you're only getting like $100,000 of increased taxes. Like, there's the risk you're talking about, right? Because if the project doesn't work, reassessment happens, values don't go up, there's no revenue. So is that the risk that concerns the other municipalities? Because somebody would have to, like,
There's still going to be a note due.
there's a problem, right?
Right, so you are absolutely right about that, and there's a good example from the pandemic. But the risk that the townships are taking, Moon Township guarantees all of the MTA's debt.
Okay.
So if for some reason commercial development would stop or slow, and we couldn't pay off our loans or fund the projects we're currently involved with, they would step up to the plate.
So now you've got council people who, that is a tough sell.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
now
a- it's
that's
a- it's a
making
real
sense.
tough
Now you
sell.
have
That's a really
council
tough
people
sell.
that have a tough sell, council people that don't understand it.
Right.
A school board authority that says, you're taking my money.
And you're taking
Yeah.
like risk
And
that
you're
I don't want to
taking
sign up
risk
for.
with it. And another thing to factor in here, you did this back in the 80s,
Right?
Yeah.
okay? And was it done out of an idea, or was it done out of necessity because the airport was moving? So you had a lot of moving
Lot,
parts in
right.
there, yeah.
And when I say 1986, that's part of the problem. People are like, antiquated.
Even though it was
Antiquated.
Very
No,
even though it was
forward-thinking.
forward thinking.
Very
Antiquated.
ahead of its time. And you've had, that's the other part, you've had, 37 years now of continual development, because this is the geography of the entire township?
It's the entire commercial areas in the township. All the commercial areas are annexed into this LRTA wrap.
Yeah, I mean, that's some pretty good stuff right
I know,
there.
but believe it or not, in the 10 years I've been the executive director, development has been really flat up until now. It is just really taken off in the township. In fact, up
Yeah.
until this whole Diamond Ridge marketplace development stuff, we only get $900,000 a year in revenue from vertical commercial. in Moon Township.
Was it because that nothing was built, or was it because they didn't give you the money?
Nothing was built.
Yeah, they had like a run, like Moon had a run.
They had a
And
run.
then it just
Right.
went on the
Flat.
pause button for a while.
And not only did it go flat on pause, during the pandemic, a lot of commercial property owners asked the county for reassessments. They appealed their assessment. So when those assessments, if and when they win their assessments, which several of them did during the pandemic, we had to write a check.
So
Or
that's kind of the
several
scenario
checks.
that he just kind of ran
Exactly.
through the risk
Oh, wow.
scenario.
Yeah,
So you actually cut
Yep.
into the bone.
yep.
Oof.
So if somebody's assessed value out along Charrington Parkway, a commercial building was, $7.5 million, and it got reassessed at 4.8.
Your revenue
we
stream
wrote
that was
checks.
based on that pro forma is the spreadsheet theory is now.
So why don't, okay, if a developer is considering something of scale, why don't they actually seek you out to try to affect this?
They should.
Absolutely.
And there are developers in Moon who specifically and particularly go to Moon because of MTA's work.
But not just Moon. I mean, if you said, okay, here's
Sure.
a great idea. We're in a different
Sure.
township, we're in a different area. How about this to try to offset my infrastructure? Because we are a growing community. We are a place where we can really take advantage of it and take it out for a dance.
I agree with
Because it
you.
would really, really earmark some funds.
Right.
And then couple that with, okay, now we got a really good story to tell, and we can get some federal money in here without a real heavy lift.
Completely agree with you.
So I want to switch gears because there's two other topics that I want to get to before we run out of time. Flipping out of Moon, because I think we covered that pretty well. Back to Steve and Riverfront 47. So in Moon, not everything's going well, but you're kind of in control.
Yeah.
Like, and when I say in control, the MTA is a winning strategy, right? But then you come back to Steve's project, which I know too much about, probably to be deadly, but you're in that role beating your head against a wall. Because there's a lot of things that has wanted to happen there that you're dealing with the private developer who's just screaming like, why can't I break through these walls? So how do you switch from like your executive director role at MTA where you kind of get to win, and I'm not going to say you're the rubber stamp, but you kind of are the rubber stamp, whereas you flip sides and you go over to that project and you're the one fighting to overcome serious roadblocks.
Well, so a lot of funny stories about, Steve's project, which is either called Riverfront 47 internally or Allegheny Shores externally. So I'm like family with them, right? I've known Steve and his project team since 2003, when I started working with them on their, Whole Foods development up through Target.
Okay.
And the experience on that 11-block development, that including some complicated transactions and maneuvers with Port Authority, which is why Steve originally hired me and my
Gotcha.
company,
Okay.
is just a mind-boggling and amazing experience. Because if you know anything about Steve Masitis and Mark Minnerly, who was his partner, or maybe still is his partner, they will do everything right. Everything right for the community, everything right for design, even if it costs them 15 to 20% more than it would cost any other developer who was just going to try to get in there, get it done, and get out.
Right.
Right? So that creates a lot of fits and starts.
Yep.
And that same thing that happened in East Liberty and that I worked through with them for a 10-year period is the same thing that's happening over in Allegheny Shores and Riverfront 47. Because they are open-minded, they're innovative, they like having other people's input into their projects, they want to be, future forward-thinking, future-proof, all those kind of things. So I was contemplating about 5 years ago about retiring. And one of the reasons I didn't retire is because my relationship with Steve and his project and the moving parts and the complications that I didn't think anybody at Delta could do except me.
Okay.
That, I have a lot of support there, but I thought that I was a unique entity and benefit and asset for Steve. But, after much soul searching and contemplation, I realized that I was part of Steve's problem. Like, trying to get public money and trying to get attention to his project, because I was too much of an insider. I was too sensitive to their issues and to them and their personalities and their feelings. And so I figured out that somebody else at Delta who's a really strong project manager is going to be able to help them way more than I could, because they will toe the line. If Steve or Mark or anybody at the Mercedes company starts deviating in thought and getting away from the mission, that project manager will bring them back in line, because I wouldn't, because I was one of them, I
Right.
became one of them after 20 years. I didn't think I was serving Steve or his project well anymore, even though Delta does really incredible things, has and still does. So I guess that's a long way of saying it is very hard to get the public sector that Steve has to rely on, that the Mercedes company has to rely on to pull off this project, to get them to pay attention to it and do it under Steve's timeline. Because once the Mercedes company gets a solution that helps move their project forward, they can move it a lot faster than the public sector can move it, a lot
Right.
faster than PennDOT can move it, a lot faster than the county can move it. And when we present those plans to those public sector partners, they're like, whoa, no way, this is not happening this fast. This is 5 years, not 24 months. So they face a lot of that. That project is going to get done. I mean, I know how Mercedes company works. The project is amazing. Have you been over there? Have you seen the grading, the site prep?
It's
all of
amazing.
That? It's unreal, right?
Yeah, it's incredible.
It'll happen.
And it's some of the best dirt in Allegheny
Yeah.
County.
I think under this governor too, Governor Shapiro, he's economic development minded. He's really aggressive. I think Steve will start getting some momentum, and it'll happen.
Fascinating, because we're on that side of it all the time. We're on the side that's fighting the uphill battle, and feel like you're running into a brick wall every day.
Well, I'll give you an example on that project. If anybody understands the project site, it's along the river and it's accessible by Main Street in Sharpsburg only.
Correct.
But it becomes a regional and global site if you can bring a flyover, a ramp down off of 228, or the Highland Park Bridge area. And about 2 or 3 years ago, PennDOT District 11 was working through the designs of their reconstruction of 28 and the Highland Park Bridge. And Steve knows he needs this
Flyover,
ramp.
right.
He needs his flyover. And the very logical thing to do would be to couple it with PennDOT's work.
Right.
So economies of scale, Steve can move fast. But our missions conflict, right? So something that really, really should have been done and could have been done that way can't be done that way, because the private or the public sector controls that decision making. And even though we believe Steve has a track record, which he does, and we could sell that concept to the district and to the state, we weren't able to do that,
Yeah, I mean, I think,
which
and
stinks.
maybe it's naive, but back to my knowing too much to be deadly, I think we would have a world-class outdoor music venue on that site, had
Oh, yeah.
the missions of public and private not conflicted. And Pittsburgh will never get to realize it. And, I mean, our listeners, the few of you that are
I
out
hope it
there.
happens. It's not dead, is it? I mean,
I don't know, but I
all
do
about
think
timing.
that it is such an unfortunate, reality of development that goes on behind the scenes that the public never knows about. Because I think the public would have loved an outdoor venue that wasn't in
Oh,
Burgettstown.
Me personally.
Unbelievable. So anyways, all right. Last topic before your trade secret is White Buffalo Productions. I love that you make the comment about ideas that get parked for a while. Like, what's that all about, and what are they?
You don't
Pause,
know
please.
Oh.
Kevin earlier today, Kevin's like, this is you are the first guest that I have been like, I want Lynn to come on the podcast. Kevin today is like, Paige, like, you've got this, right? I never do my homework for these podcasts. So he's like, "You've got this, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Great." He's like, "I'm gonna introduce Lynn, and then like you just ask a bunch of questions." I think I've said one thing this whole podcast, and now he's coming out with White Buffalo Productions. I have no idea what he's talking about. So this has been great.
I didn't see that on the CV, by the way.
Well, I'm very interested
I can't wait to hear this.
where she says she parks her great ideas.
What is White Buffalo Productions, though? Can you just explain that first?
I did see that, actually. Okay.
So, when we started this conversation, I was telling you I'm a journalism major from Duquesne University. So, in my fantasy world, I'm a writer, right? A lot of people are, I guess. And 5 years ago, when I was contemplating retirement, I'm also a Jesus freak. So I was like praying out loud for it to have this flood of ideas come into me so I could be writing something. Writing to influence people, writing to make money, but writing to influence people. Why,
I love that honesty, by the way.
I had, thank you.
I do.
I had this flood of ideas come, or this rush of ideas. And so I, opened a bunch of Word documents and started writing what those ideas were, but I wanted a place to put them where I could develop them, whether I needed to promote myself or, create manuscripts, T-shirts, whatever my ideas were. So I created White Buffalo Productions, and White Buffalo is a native symbol. When a white buffalo is born, it means there's peace coming. There's going to be peace coming to the land. So I created White Buffalo Productions, and I started writing these books. And that's really why I wanted to retire, so I could write full-time. But I'm down to working 2 days a week. And Wednesday through Sunday, I work on my White Buffalo Productions projects, which are they're diverse. They're probably even conflicting. One of my books is about the so-called Apostle Paul, and one of my books is a soft porn.
Well, it took us 40 minutes to get to the juice.
So, and then a whole bunch of stuff in between. Yeah. I want to do those things more.
I like you even more now, Lynn.
Thank you.
Your retirement's going to be very entertaining.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I'm hoping.
I think you should
Hoping.
start your own podcast, because
I
I
know.
would like to stay up to date on the progress
That is
of
one
White
of my
Buffalo
ideas that
Productions.
flooded into me too. A
I love
podcast.
that.
It's a sports podcast. I'm addicted.
You also have a great I listened to you were just on the NAOP podcast.
No, I didn't listen to that.
I did, and I was like, she has such a like calm, cool, like you come across, your voice is very calm, cool, and collected and soothing. So I think you've got a great voice for podcasting.
I have a podcast idea written. I have a framework for it. I have a name for it. I'm an NFL.
We got a guy for you.
We got a guy.
I'm an NFL fan, particularly a Steelers fan.
I'm sorry.
Currently psychologically disturbed.
Yeah.
So this was
not a good.
This was a really good distraction.
I
have to
think
tell
she
you.
means because of football, not like
Yes.
in life psychologically.
Yes.
Football.
Yeah, it was
they
not a
laid the
good
bed this
first
weekend.
showing.
That was not
It was
good.
horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was shocking, frankly.
Yeah,
So that's White Buffalo.
I love that.
I love that too. I feel like we need to have another podcast just to hear about White Buffalo, because you put serious teaser material out there. Serious teaser material.
Like 6 people listen to our podcast, but the day White Buffalo podcast
There
hits
we
the
go.
market here.
Just skyrocket.
It's the sex thing, porn that sells, right?
Absolutely.
That sells.
Everybody wants
Very
Everybody.
true.
Yeah.
Sex sells. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, outside of sex selling and White Buffalo Productions, we always end. Actually, we got to pause for a second. Any comments on the bourbon, Mr. Castle? We've
am I
this one
bringing that
before.
up now?
Yeah, we've had this one before.
Oh, well,
so
I think it's
kind of
incredible
old news.
kismet that, okay, you're talking about White Buffalo. All right.
Oh, right.
All right.
Buffalo
Ah.
Trace.
And we are
Interesting.
drinking
That is
Buffalo
true.
Trace.
This is true.
Now, Buffalo Trace is a phenomenal distillery. It's in
Here is
It's
Van
Gotta
Olsen.
grab the bottle.
Okay, but the interesting thing about Buffalo Trace got its name because where the distillery is, and I forget the name of the river, and I apologize, but the distillery is right at the place where the Buffalo would cross. So this is a real
Frankfurt.
name. It's Frankfurt?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Frankfurt River?
No, Frankfurt's the
Oh, I thought he said the river.
town.
It actually might be the Frankfurt River, well, whatever river it is, and there's a place that you can actually see in the distillery where it crosses. I actually really like this bourbon.
How about you, Lynn? You're not a bourbon drinker.
I'm not a bourbon drinker.
But did you like it?
I love it.
Interesting.
I love
Because
it.
I would say,
I've-
as a bourbon drinker, this is a harsh isn't the right word, but it's a
It's not a starter bourbon.
It's a bold bourbon. It's not a
Is it?
starter bourbon.
Is it? I have
It's-
no frame of reference.
I
If
think
you
it-
like this, then there's a lot
I'll
of bourbons.
pour you some old tub after we stop
Yeah.
finishing, or after we stop recording, and then you'll have a frame of reference. This
I
is
think
much
this actually
smoother.
mellows out very nicely.
Yeah, I think this is
And
a very drinkable.
This
bourbon.
is the same place that distills Pappy Van Winkle,
Yes.
okay? And they have, I'm
Is
going to
that
get
that Van
the,
Winkle one right there?
Yeah, that's that one.
yeah, I'm going to get this number
one's
wrong, but I
fancy.
believe there's 160 ricks on site. They just recently went through an expansion. And the brick, wood, tin, and there's only 2 mashes, I believe, that they make their bourbon from. And where it sits in the rick and what type of rick it's in determines what bottle it's going to be and aged. So it's a great place. It's a great place to visit. You'll learn an awful lot about bourbon, and it's wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
So we have to end with your trade secret. It can be
trade
life, it can be business.
Something you wish, like, the public or outsiders knew about what you do for work. It could be.
So my trade secret is actually something I said a couple of weeks ago when Congressman DeLuzio came to Moon Township and gave us one of those fake big checks, right? And I was able to get the microphone, and I promised myself a couple of years ago, whenever I have the microphone, I'm going to promote love, leading with love, collaboration. And so when I got the microphone at that Congressman DeLuzio event, I went into and the people that knew me in the room were like, here she goes. But the point is, the trade secret is that when we all get in a room and we're all trying to accomplish something really big and something lasting and something good, we're not individually going to get every single thing that we want. And no one person in that room should think they're going to get that. But collectively, we are going to get something amazing. And the only way we can do that is if we respect and love each other when we get out of that room. It's like making sure you don't go to bed angry with your spouse or your partner. When I walk out of the room with these people I'm meeting with who I didn't know a year and a half ago, we're hugging. I'm hugging them. They're hugging me. We love each other. We're accomplishing something great. That's my trade secret.
I love it.
That's
That's
great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
We had an open house today on a piece of property that we're developing, and we got really close to a solution, and we walked away from that solution. And a lot of people were asking me why, and I wish I would have talked to you about 6 hours ago, because my answer would have been very more succinct based on hearing your trade secret, because effectively we ended up walking away because this was a group we weren't going to be able to hug at the end of the day. I mean, this are just, it is the frank reality.
Yeah, the mutual respect and yeah, it's very important.
Right.
Well,
So,
And I think
Candace,
I
that's
need a
kind of a
voice-
rarity.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't happen with every transaction or every
Especially in
project
this
that you work
industry,
on.
because the fact of the matter is you have a lot of money at stake, a lot of emotions on the line, a lot of, egos, to be
Egos,
very
yeah.
clear. I mean, this is these people's legacy. It's not like they're doing something that's going to be an afterthought in a year. They're building something that's going to last for decades to come. So understandably, there's ego and managing that. And one of my questions, if Kevin would have ever let me ask it, was what your background was. But I was,
real?
I didn't know. I figured you probably have some kind of engineering background or maybe a finance background, but also like psychology. I have to imagine that you get very good at talking people off ledges and like, using a soothing voice to calm tempers and tensions in a lot of situations. So I don't envy that, but I am glad that someone like you is doing how they're doing the Lord's
I actually would have
work.
positioned that question because my question I would have asked is, how do you put up with all the bullshit? Wanting to push them off the ledges.
She goes home and writes soft porn.
That's
Well, I didn't know that.
perfect.
I didn't know that till towards the end of the discussion. So now it makes perfectly good.
There you
The
have
planets align.
Gives me my best material, right?
We're
That's how I get motivated.
We're gonna need an NC-17 sticker for this
Oh
podcast.
my gosh. But I do think bringing it back to her trade secret, like leading with love might be idyllic. Like it might be hoping for something in this industry that's a little extreme, but I think, the mutual respect that's necessary to produce significant outcomes, complicated projects, like I think that's a real thing, and I think it's as good of a trade secret as we had heard.
Yeah, and I think also you must be one of those people that think 10, 20 years down the line.
Yeah.
It strikes me that you don't do anything that today is irrelevant. Today, let's just live in today, but what we're really trying to do is create a legacy that's a lot further, and I would imagine you don't see the obstacles. You see the goal.
I do not see the obstacles,
And
you're right.
you just, there's a focus. We're gonna get there, and don't worry about the horse being blind, just load the wagon.
I like that.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much
Thank you for
being
inviting
here
me. It's
today.
been wonderful.
Again, if you're listening, like us, follow us, share us, sponsor us if you're interested. But thanks for joining us, and cheers, Lynn. It was awesome to have you
Cheers.
here today
Thank you.
and to meet you. So,
Pleasure.
Thank you.
all right, Trade Secrets, that's a wrap. See you next time.